Hey everyone, and welcome back. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
All right, well, today we're going back in time to May 6th, 1937,
Ooh.
to a moment that really shocked the world, the Hindenburg disaster.
Yeah.
So picture this. It's 1937 in Lakehurst, New Jersey,
Okay.
and the massive airship, the Hindenburg,
Uh-huh.
is preparing to land after a transatlantic journey from Europe.
Wow.
This thing, it was absolutely massive, longer than 3 jumbo jets put together.
No way.
Yeah, it was incredible. People were so excited to see it. Cameras were rolling and everything.
I bet.
And then in a flash,
No.
disaster struck.
It's amazing how this event, even after almost a century, still manages to capture our attention. The images of the airship engulfed in flames are just unforgettable.
Right.
And then the mystery surrounding the cause of the fire keeps people fascinated to this day.
I completely agree. There's something about airships that sparks the imagination.
For sure.
So for this deep dive, we've got quite a bit to go through. We've got eyewitness accounts, news reports, official investigations, a whole mountain of information.
That's a lot.
But don't worry, we're here to guide you through all of it and help make sense of what exactly happened.
That sounds great.
So as we get started, what stands out to you?
Well, to fully grasp what went wrong, we need to start with the Hindenburg itself.
All right.
This wasn't just some hot air balloon floating around.
Right.
This was an absolute luxury passenger airship, almost like a flying hotel,
Wow.
designed to take passengers all across the Atlantic in incredible style.
I mean, besides the fact that it looked like a giant silver cloud in the sky,
Yeah, exactly.
what else was special about it?
Well, the biggest difference between the Hindenburg and the planes we fly in today is that it was filled with hydrogen.
Okay.
So it's a gas that's lighter than air, which is what allows things to float.
Right, right.
But here's the thing, hydrogen is extremely flammable.
So they filled this luxurious airship, a flying hotel,
Yeah.
with something that could essentially explode at any moment.
Pretty much.
Talk about risky travel plans.
Well, back then, hydrogen was pretty much the go-to gas for airships.
Okay.
It was cheap, it was plentiful,
Mm-hmm.
but it definitely came with risks.
Yeah.
And in the case of the Hindenburg, well, those risks turned into a very real and very horrific tragedy.
All right.
So even before all of this, the landing in New Jersey was already delayed because of bad weather,
Okay.
which probably made things on the ground even more tense.
So let me get this straight.
Yeah.
We have this massive hydrogen-filled airship coming in for a landing that's already been delayed by storms.
Exactly.
What happened next?
As the Hindenburg approached the mooring mast,
Okay.
which you can kind of think of like a giant docking station for airships,
Right.
it had to make these really sharp turns to line up for landing.
Ooh, okay.
And some experts think those turns might have put some extra stress on the airship structure.
So maybe something broke or ripped because of the turns?
It's definitely a possibility.
Okay.
And don't forget, the whole thing is filled with this incredibly flammable hydrogen gas.
Right.
So even the smallest leak would have mixed with the air, creating a super dangerous situation.
So then what?
Well, all of a sudden, people on the ground started seeing flames erupt near the tail of the airship.
So the hydrogen ignited? Was it like an engine problem that caused it or something?
Well, that's what the investigators were desperately trying to figure out.
Yeah.
But it all happened so fast.
Yeah.
In less than 40 seconds, the entire airship was consumed by flames.
Wow.
There's actually a recording of a radio reporter, Herbert Morrison, who was there at the landing.
Wow.
He was describing it all to his listeners as the disaster unfolded.
Wow.
And his words are really chilling. It's burst into flames, it's falling, it's crashing. The humanity.
I can't even imagine hearing that live on the radio.
Yeah.
So what exactly caused this explosion? Was it
Mhm.
simply the flammable hydrogen or was there something else going on?
Well, that is the million-dollar question that's been debated for decades.
Okay.
There are a few main theories, each with its own set of evidence and supporters.
Okay, well, let's break down these theories one by one.
Sure.
And let's start with the most dramatic one. Sabotage.
Okay.
Was the Hindenburg deliberately destroyed?
Well, it's certainly a theory that's hard to just ignore,
Yeah.
especially when you think about all the political tension going on at that time.
Right.
I mean, the Hindenburg was a symbol of German engineering,
Yeah.
a symbol of national pride.
Yeah.
And so some people think that it was targeted by enemies of the Nazi regime.
Okay.
There were even some rumors going around about a crew member.
Really?
Yeah, who may have had ties to communist groups.
So like a spy thriller happening in the sky?
Yeah, kinda.
But if someone did sabotage the Hindenburg, you'd think there'd be some evidence.
Right.
Did they ever find anything concrete?
Well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
There's really no smoking gun, No bomb fragments or anything like that.
Right.
No real clear signs of tampering either.
Okay.
So while the sabotage theory makes for a really exciting story, there just isn't enough hard evidence to support it.
Okay, so maybe it wasn't a deliberate act.
Right.
What about some of the theories that point to more accidental causes?
Oh, okay.
What about that static electricity theory? I remember hearing about that one.
Well, the static electricity theory is definitely one of the more popular explanations.
Okay.
And if you remember those storms we were talking about, well, storms have the potential to create a lot of electrical charge in the air.
Oh, okay.
And the Hindenburg, with its metal frame and its fabric covering, might become like this giant floating conductor.
So you're saying the airship basically built up a static charge, like
Right.
if you rub a balloon on your hair.
Exactly. And
Right.
so if that charge found a way to discharge, maybe as a spark, then it could have ignited the hydrogen gas, causing the explosion.
Yeah, okay.
Some researchers believe that the wet mooring ropes,
Right.
which were connected to the grounded metal frame, could have created a pathway for that spark to jump.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But there's another theory that focuses on that outer covering of the Hindenburg,
Right.
the incendiary paint theory. What's that all about?
Well, this theory suggests that the paint used on the Hindenburg's outer skin was actually flammable. And it might have contributed to how fast the fire was able to spread. You see, the paint actually contained these metallic compounds. And some experts think that those compounds, when exposed to heat or friction, could have ignited and then created this really intense fire that quickly consumed the airship's fabric covering.
So they basically coated this thing in something that could easily catch fire.
Pretty much.
I mean, it seems crazy to use flammable paint on an airship that's filled with hydrogen.
Well, you'd think so.
Yeah.
But you have to remember that this was back in the 1930s.
Right.
Our understanding of material science back then was completely different from today.
Yeah.
They may not have even fully understood just how dangerous using those specific compounds in the paint could be.
Okay, so we've got sabotage, we've got static electricity, and we've got incendiary paint.
Right.
Which one do you think is the most likely cause?
That's tough. Well, there really isn't a definitive answer.
Okay.
And that's honestly a big part of what keeps the Hindenburg disaster so fascinating.
Yeah.
Each theory has its strengths and weaknesses,
Right.
and there's evidence to support all of them to a certain degree.
So it's basically a scientific mystery novel.
Exactly.
We have the clues, but we still haven't solved the case.
That's a great way to put it.
And I know there have been more recent experiments and research that's been done trying to shed some light on this whole thing.
Yeah, for example, some researchers have actually been able to recreate the Hindenburg's fabric and paint materials.
Wow, really?
Yeah, and they've conducted burn tests to see how easily they ignite.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's really interesting stuff.
So what did those experiments show?
Right.
Did they point to one theory more than the others?
The results were really interesting. They actually showed that the fabric itself wasn't as flammable as people initially thought. So if the fire had been driven only by the fabric burning, it probably would have taken a lot longer for the entire Hindenburg to be consumed.
So that kind of rules out the incendiary paint theory?
Well, not necessarily. While those experiments suggest that the paint alone probably didn't cause that initial ignition, they don't completely rule it out as a factor.
Okay.
Some experts still believe that the paint, even if it didn't start the fire, could have helped it spread more quickly once the hydrogen ignited.
So maybe it was a combination of things.
Right.
A spark from static electricity ignited the hydrogen, and then the paint just made the fire spread faster and more intense.
That's definitely a plausible scenario.
Right.
And we also have to consider all the other flammable materials inside the Hindenburg.
Oh, right, yeah.
The furniture, the carpets,
Right.
even the diesel fuel. So once that fire got going, it would spread incredibly quickly through all those materials, creating this massive inferno.
So almost like the whole Hindenburg was a giant tinderbox just waiting for that one spark?
Yeah, exactly.
And once it got that spark, there was just no stopping it.
Right.
So is that it?
Well, there's one more theory we should probably touch on.
Okay.
It adds kind of another layer of complexity to this whole thing.
Okay, I'm listening.
It's called the puncture hypothesis.
The puncture hypothesis, what's that?
So this theory suggests that the Hindenburg structure might have been weakened over time, maybe because of stress from all those transatlantic flights, or even a small collision during a previous landing.
Okay.
So they think that a bracing wire which basically helps hold the whole structure together, may have snapped or torn during the landing.
Oh.
And that could have created a hole in one of the gas cells.
Oh, wow.
That held all the hydrogen.
So essentially a leak in the system, which would explain how the hydrogen was able to escape.
Yeah.
And mix with the air, creating those perfect conditions for an explosion.
Right.
Did they find any evidence of damage to the Hindenburg structure?
It's really difficult to say for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, the intensity of the fire, it would have destroyed most of the evidence. And back then, they didn't have the same strict inspection procedures that we have today.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, so the puncture hypothesis is still possible.
Yeah.
But like all the other theories, there's just no definitive proof. It's just another piece of the puzzle in this whole mystery.
And what's so interesting is that the Hindenburg disaster wasn't just about, flammable materials or a random spark.
Right.
It was also about human error and design flaws.
Yeah.
And the fact that technology can be so unpredictable.
Absolutely.
It's a reminder that even the most impressive things that we engineer can still be vulnerable to the forces of nature and the imperfections of our own designs. But even beyond the science and all the theories, the Hindenburg disaster was a human tragedy.
Of course.
36 people lost their lives that day.
Absolutely. And while the images of the Hindenburg burning are what we remember most, it's important to remember those individual stories of the people who were on board, the people who saw it happen, and the people who risked their own lives to help.
Yeah, you're so right.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in the, the spectacle of the whole event.
Right.
But at the heart of it, the Hindenburg disaster is a story about people.
Yeah.
About their dreams, their hopes, their courage in the face of this unimaginable tragedy.
Yeah, it really makes you think what it must have been like to be there that day.
I know, I can't imagine.
To see this incredible symbol of progress and innovation turn into a fiery wreck in just seconds.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about how that moment really changed how the whole world saw air travel.
For sure. I mean, before the Hindenburg airships, they were seen as the future.
The future of luxury travel.
Uh-huh.
People dreamed about floating across the Atlantic in these massive, elegant airships.
It sounds amazing.
Yeah.
But after the disaster, the public's trust in airships, it just completely disappeared.
Yeah, understandably so.
I mean, just seeing those images of the Hindenburg burning, it would have been terrifying.
Right.
It's no wonder people started to question whether airships were even safe.
And that shift in public opinion it had a huge impact on the airship industry.
Right. No one wanted to invest in it anymore.
Exactly. Investment in airship technology just dried up.
Wow.
And the focus shifted to airplanes.
Makes sense.
Which, they were becoming much safer, more efficient.
So the Hindenburg disaster marked the end of the airship era.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's kind of ironic, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
This symbol of human ingenuity ultimately leading to the decline of the very technology it represented.
It reminds us that progress doesn't always go in a straight line.
True.
Sometimes setbacks and tragedies, they can lead to these unexpected changes in direction.
But, I mean, at least the Hindenburg disaster also had some positive impacts.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
It forced the aviation industry to really take a hard look at their safety procedures.
Yeah.
And led to much stricter regulations for air travel.
So, in a way, what we learned from the Hindenburg
made
air travel safer for everyone in the long run.
Definitely, yeah.
It's a bittersweet legacy, but still really important.
I agree.
So, what happened to the Hindenburg? I mean, obviously it was destroyed in the fire.
Yeah, a lot of it was destroyed, but the memory of it definitely lives on. There's a memorial at the crash site.
Where was that again?
In Lakehurst, New Jersey.
Okay.
It's a place where people can, pay their respects and learn more about this moment in history.
I've also heard that hangar number 1, where the Hindenburg was supposed to dock, is still standing today.
That's right, it's still there.
It must be such a strange feeling to be in that hangar.
Oh, definitely.
Knowing what happened there.
Yeah, it's a place where history feels very real.
Right.
And very present.
Yeah.
But it's also a reminder not only of the tragedy, but of the resilience of the human spirit.
That's a good point.
Yeah. There were so many stories of heroism that day.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Crew members helping passengers escape.
Wow.
Ground crew risking their lives to pull survivors out of the wreckage.
It's amazing how even in the face of something so horrific, people were still able to find the strength and courage to help others.
Absolutely.
And I think those stories of bravery are just as important to remember as all the technical details.
I agree.
I know it happened almost a century ago, but people are still fascinated by the Hindenburg.
Right. It's incredible.
And I know there are researchers who are still trying to figure out exactly what happened.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Using modern technology and everything.
They're still trying to piece together that puzzle.
So you're saying the mystery of the Hindenburg hasn't actually been solved?
Not entirely. There are still questions we don't have the answers to.
Wow.
And, new insights are still being uncovered. It's a story that keeps evolving as we continue to learn more about the past.
I love that.
Yeah. Pretty amazing.
It's a reminder that we should never stop asking questions and never stop exploring.
Exactly.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the Hindenburg disaster, what's the one thing you want our listeners to take away from all of this?
I think the Hindenburg serves as this powerful reminder of just how complex technology can be, how unpredictable events can be, and how resilient humans can be. It's a story that continues to fascinate us and makes us think about both the triumphs and tragedies of how far we've come.
Beautifully said.
Thanks.
And while the Hindenburg may be gone, its story lives on.
It does.
Teaching us about innovation, safety, and the enduring human spirit.
Absolutely. And maybe a final thought for our listeners. As we keep pushing the boundaries of technology in the 21st century, what can we learn from the Hindenburg to make sure history doesn't repeat itself?
That's a good question.
How can we balance all this amazing innovation with responsibility and make sure that the advancements we make are met with a deep understanding of the risks and consequences that might come with them?
Those are definitely important questions for all of us to be thinking about.
Yeah. For sure.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Hindenburg disaster.
It is my pleasure.
We hope you learned something new.
Yeah.
And that you have a new appreciation for this complex and tragic event.
I hope so.
So until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.